Hey friends, Bill here. Hope you guys are having a good week. We're having a good one here at Sports Fan. There's so much opportunity out there. I was talking with a gentleman today. We're exploring the idea of helping or organize or doing something in the Ivory Coast around the Africa Cup of Nations, the largest soccer tournament in Africa, and this is a tournament that leads to the World Cup. The World Cup will be in the United States in 2026, and so there's just increasing opportunity. You get to talk with lots of interesting people. A bishop there in Burundi, which is around Rwanda and Kenya, Uganda. And so there's just you know what, when you get out there, you listen to some of those guys. That definitely, I think the one thing about talking to men like that in these other countries is there's definitely a genuineness in their faith. There's a desire to serve and do things. And he was telling me about getting out preaching the streets. And so lots of opportunity out there. To me, the Lord's always working. And so things are going good here in addition just to heading off to London next Thursday, Lord willing. And another brother, Tim Brown, is going to join us there. So there's 9 of us going so far. I'm not giving up yet. And then Santiago, John Clement's going to Chile with the Pan Am Games with Warren and Darlene and Diego, and Lord willing, Steve Kendall. And then we're working on the Grey Cup. Met a pastor up there last week who is joining us, and he open air preaches. And so it's just a lot out there. You just got to keep on reaching out to people. So I'm excited about it. But today we're going to talk with Andy Schmelzer, one of the Super Bowl outreach team leaders this year. So let's bring Andy on and talk to him about his journey into preaching. Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Good to see you. You look awful comfortable there.
Yeah, just chilling.
All right, man. All right. Well, let's get into it. When did we meet? I know I've asked you before, but we meet because I knew about you before. I think you actually came to Super Bowl.
Okay. You're kind of breaking up a bit, but I'm thinking you're asking me when we first met. And my first Super Bowl was 2010 in Miami. And I think a couple, 3 years before that, there was an outreach at the Atlanta race for NASCAR. And we had met there and talked quite a bit and really got to know who each other were back then.
Yeah. So that happened after the Tampa race. Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay, now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think after Tampa, like even John Speed and several people got together in Atlanta for that NASCAR race. Didn't we stay in a camp and go back
Yeah.
to the track? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, cool. So tell us, like, how I know you and your wife, y'all were doing some preliminary work going down to sort of the Caribbean, if you will, and doing medical work. Just talk about like what spurred you on to for both of y'all to do that at the beginning.
Um, Me and my wife got married in 2002, and she had been doing mission work for quite a few years. And I've always had an interest in it, but never knew how to get involved or, who to reach out to, how to connect with people like that. So when I found out she was doing that, I said, well, let's just do that as a couple. Whatever you do, I'd go with you. And we were doing those things. And while we were going on some missions, we had run across evangelism and always had it on our hearts to do it, but didn't know how. There was no training. There was no churches and pastors saying, hey, we're sending you out. We could even ask, and they just didn't know what to do with people that wanted to evangelize. So we were kind of stuck going on mission works, showing the Jesus film out into villages and things like that. And basically, it was, you know, get people to recite a prayer in a mass group after a movie. And we learned evangelism and thought there's, a whole lot missing, and tried to implement, um, having one-on-one evangelism conversations with all the patients. And the organization we went with, they were like, no, 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 we're just not going to get involved in that and do that. We're just going to go out at night, show the Jesus film, and that's our outreach. And after that, I realized that of all the medical missions she's been doing, that she's been doing it with so many different people. So I said, why don't we go ourselves, organize our own team to go? And it's like, do you know enough people, enough doctors, surgeons, nurses, all these things to be able to form a team and go? That way we can recruit a few other people to evangelize and be general helpers and really put this biblical evangelism into the medical missions. And she's like, sure, let's do all that. So she recruited a team. We started going to Ghana in Africa, and went there for quite a few years. And it was really neat where we were able to have a we'd run the whole thing to where the patients would come in, they'd be triaged, they'd hear the gospel, they'd get in line, see the doctor, get treated, and if they needed meds, they'd get them. If they needed surgery, that would be scheduled, and we would do that for 2 weeks. And it was really a blessing to be able to implement actual evangelism into a gospel type Christian outreach, a actual Christian mission that actually shared the gospel.
Seriously, you went to Ghana?
Yeah, yeah, that was one of the first places I went when we started going together.
Wasn't that a French-speaking country?
No, it's all English.
Oh, is it really? How was it?
Actually, no, actually, it's not. We had a lot of people knew English, and there was like three different dialects of their language, and we would work through translators. But no, there wasn't really much for French going on there.
How was it? Was it hard to go and all that, or was it obviously it's different, like just the technology, but was it an easy trip?
It wasn't super easy, but it it worked well. The Lord blessed it. There was never any travel issues. Well, shouldn't say there's no travel issues. If Victoria was here, she'd be laughing at me when we went to go home on Ghana Airlines. We show up at the airport and they say, "Come back tomorrow. We don't have a plane. The lease fell through." So other than that, there's really been no bad issues with being left anywhere, missing flights. We've had teams come and go, and uh, not miss sections and things like that. So that was a real blessing. Like when you do these things, it takes a lot of planning, organizing. It takes months ahead of time. Making sure everybody's got everything straight, and yeah, it worked out though.
That's pretty interesting. That's amazing. Yeah, I was talking to this guy, just to digress for a second, in the Ivory Coast, and man, it's just really. I was telling somebody today that I don't know what it looks like over there. Like, over here you can imagine what things look like, and you don't have to have been there before. But over there, it's just decidedly different, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
it's a pretty interesting transition. That's pretty cool. I didn't know you went to Ghana. I think Sterling Long went to Ghana. I think he was telling me or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, we'll keep moving here. So you did that for a while. I think I remember your story, but how did you go from that to like considering the open air preaching? What was going on with y'all?
Um, I got to go way back into when I first heard about um actually being born again. I grew up Catholic, and as a teenager, I had brothers that had experienced like a Southern Baptist type, ask Jesus in your heart, repeat this prayer after me kind of thing. And they came home and shared that with the family. And I'm like, okay, growing up Catholic, there was a lot of questions that weren't answered. Uh, and this answered a lot of things of understanding there's more to this than you can only hope you can go to heaven. There's no security of your salvation. And from from that, I started reading my Bible. I did the ask Jesus in your heart thing and thought I was saved. But even through that, reading in the Bible on my own, trying to figure things out, the verse that haunted me was the Great Commission to go ye therefore and preach the gospel to all creation. It's like, okay, this is something that obviously it was God put on my heart to say, you got to go do this. And I'm like, okay, how do you do this? How does a teenager do it? What do I gotta wait till I'm 18, enjoy the Peace Corps, and somebody will just send me overseas to do this? I had no idea, but it's been burning in my heart all that time. And even as a false convert through my 20s and younger 30s, um, still trying to ask churches and pastors. It's like, okay, we're saved, we're born again. How do we share this with people? How do we, people, bring up religion, and it's like, yeah, I know I'm going to heaven. And they ask how, what's it like? How do you get saved? And it's like, I knew what I believed, but I didn't know how to explain it. Um, and no pastors would really have any answers. So years later, after being married to Victoria, we moved to Oregon, and like a lot of people have, skimming through the channels and run across the Way the Master TV, and that really showed me, wow, this is how it's done. This is how to do this, and we learned that. We studied it, looking at some of the open air preaching videos that Ray and some others have had on the internet, and I'd look at them and I'd think, I have to do this. And after watching some of these videos with my wife, she goes, "You really want to do that?" And I said, "No, I think I have to do that
You
because
really
it's
want
like,
to do that. I
yeah."
love it.
And it's like, no, not really. I still don't. But I mean, if you and I and the rest of us don't go, who will? So it was more of, you know, this is an answer to what's been burning in my heart all them years, how to do it, what to do, and then seeing people actually get out in public, and do that soapbox on the street corner. It's like public evangelism. Who does that? And it's like, why isn't it done anymore? And it needs to be. And that's where I've had the passion to open air street preach, to where I'm looking at this. How do you do it? Finding people to do that, running across other ministries that Living Waters was involved with, looking at people that knew them, looking at their personal ministry, watching their videos, and trying to get together with people like that, even if it took traveling somewhere to go join somebody that's doing this in their local area, to say, I need to join this, I need to learn how to do it, teach me, and things like that. So a lot of it's then stemmed from finding others doing that, watching their videos to learn, or trying to join people to learn actually how to do it.
Awesome. Hey, Gary, thanks for tuning in today. I was talking to David Day about you today. Looks like you guys are having a good time in Montgomery. Andy, it looks like you're saying, so this was going on typically works in this slow pace, and so this is going on with you, and then you just happen to come upon Ray Comfort, in a sense. Did you go, holy cow, is this what this is? Or did you go, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for? What was your initial reaction?
That was the initial reaction. It's like, this is exactly what we were looking for. And me and my wife would look at each other and say, this is like the missing link in evangelizing. It's like, yeah, you can take someone down Romans Road and this and that and press for a decision, but this whole idea of, biblical examples of, what did Jesus do? What did he say? The use of the law, things like that. And, learning not really, well, the beginning learner learning the actual script, like whether it's a good person test, courtroom analogy, it's a great start. It's the way to learn it, and from there to understand why you're using these. And then when you understand the doctrine better, then it makes it more, I guess, easy to know how to explain it and share it to people once you understand it yourself. But that's where a lot of it was missing when I was younger. It's like, I know I believe this, but how do you articulate it? I can't articulate it because I didn't understand it, which basically comes from being a false convert. You can't understand it anyway. So that's part of the reason why I couldn't figure out what was going on and how to do it, because as a false convert, you're not even saved anyway. So
awesome. Ron, how are you doing today? Good. Thanks for tuning in. I see you guys on the campus all the time. You're doing a great spot. Keep it up. And so, like, when you saw it, and how much do you think that your time for the medical missions helped get you ready to know that this was it? Had you been through that and said, this is not it, and this is it? Or how did that work together? How did God use all that together?
I think it all fit in at the same time, because the ministry we were involved in was more of the overseas medical missions, and even there was certain years we'd go a couple different times, and then even during that time when we're home, I would still open air preach and go on the streets, things like that. So it all just fit into where it's like, this was something that was missing. It's something that we knew how to do. It was something missing from mission trips, a lot of Christian mission trips. Unfortunately, it's like, Jesus loves you, we're going to build a building. Humanitarian missions are great. I'd never say don't go do those things. And But without the gospel, we realized that all we were doing in these medical missions were putting a band-aid on people and sending them off to hell anyway. So um, it just from there it was just continuing to know that this is it, this is how it's done, this is what needs to be done. We were willing to do it, and I just knew there that it's just nothing that would just fizzle out or fade or end. Because even after learning how to evangelize, even in a one-to-one, trying to just even walk through a mall, hand someone a tract, try to talk to them, from there it's basically um it's just not gonna fizzle out, and it hasn't after 17 plus more years later. And I've learned a lot from Heath. Hey, Heath.
Amen. Heath, good to see you. Thanks for being in. Hope the Packers game, your wild weekend was good. So let me ask you this. So just trying to identify somebody watching here and thinking, going through these steps. So now you start preaching, and did you lose, the people who said, hey, good for you, the medical missions, this is too much? Did you lose friends or family when you started open air preaching? Or what began to happen right there at the beginning?
Yeah, some of the people that would come on mission trips with us that we may not have known, they would find our website and want to be involved, and sometimes would say, okay, now, like, let's say someone is like a nurse and want to join us, and they're interested in the evangelism and aren't familiar with it at all. I would send them to some of Living Water sites to see how it's actually done. And some would say, yeah, this is great, I'm not sure if I want to do it. Okay. Some would even disagree. Would even be at certain countries where we would take some time on a certain day to not do treatment in a clinic or a hospital. We'd go out on the streets and evangelize. And some people didn't like that and thought, no, this is where we can't do this anymore. But it really wasn't that many. Still, people would come and still join us in those things.
Gotcha. What about back home? Were you preaching back home on the street or just on the trips?
Oh, back home too, all at the same time, learning, getting to know how to do it, joining people. And yeah, with especially with family, when you got this understanding of what the actual gospel is, and you share it with them, especially with a Catholic family, there's lots of problems with that. Not just losing friends, but you basically have family that turns into strangers almost, want nothing to do with you. And I'm sure there's plenty that I've talked to before that have similar experiences of, oh, so and so is coming. Yeah, you can come to this, but don't talk about that kind of stuff. So a lot of guys understand this, and yeah, you do lose a lot of that stuff. But I really look at the bond of friendships over the years of whether it's been Super Bowls or any of the other outreaches, or even um, being around town or in this state. And even when I first ran into Mason, the first time when I first couple years I was open air preaching, he was learning all this open air preaching, and we ran into each other, and that's how we had met. And then from there, I look at people like him and people at Super Bowls and other events, and I look at this kind of family as a stronger bond of friendships, a stronger bond of family and spiritualness than unfortunately I do with my blood siblings. So it's unfortunate, but it's such a strong thing where, as much as I think I've lost in other friends and family, I've gained so much more even, and it's a bigger blessing than what I've lost.
It doesn't sound like it, but did you ever begin to say, hey, this might be too much when family turned on you and so forth, or were you already prepared to persevere against the resistance?
Yeah, I had nothing in me that would say maybe this is too much, maybe I should take a step back. That was nothing, because for me, when you have the truth, when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to the doctrine and what it actually is and how people get saved, you can't back down from the truth. You can't let the truth go away, or let someone remove it when it's the answer to everything.
That's good. That's really good. All right, okay, so you're around mid part of 2000s, and you've seen this. You started preaching and mission trips, and so then when did you really enter Ray Comfort world sort of more and get into that. Did you go to one of the ambassador academies or boot camps or anything?
Yeah, the evangelism boot camps that were going on before the ambassador academies, those were really special to me because that's where I actually learned to open air preach. I'd do evangelism, I'd do one-to-ones, and being by myself, there was really it seemed really difficult for me to just break that sound barrier, as we call it, to say, get up on that box, open air preach. Here I am by yourself. I'm too scared. The best way to start is to be with other people doing it. So me and my wife would go to a couple of the evangelism boot camps. I think one was in LA, New York City. Um, and it's amazing to really see what God had done through that, to where now that it's like, okay, I've done this, I've open air preached, I'd go home and I'm still can't open air preach by myself. I'm just too much of a chicken. And I'd have an amp, I'm, making all these purchases of, half mile hailer, stools, all this stuff to preach open air. And I'm not using this stuff. And I'd go to like first time, I think the first or second time I went to a Ducks game at the U of O, and I'm there, I'm handing out tracts, and I just didn't preach. And I'm leaving. I have my stuff in my wagon and I'm leaving. And it's like, I can't just, what am I doing not doing this? So it's like I saw this long bank of porta potties as I'm leaving. Tons of people by it. And I thought, okay, if I get myself, this is a half mile hailer. If I can get myself about 20, 30 yards away so they can't throw stuff at me, maybe I can do that here, and they can't see me because I'm so far away, and it was dark at the time. So I'm setting up. I just turned on the amp, I mic'd up, and I started preaching to them. And the empty beer cans aren't going to make it from where they were to me, so I felt safe that way. And after about maybe a half hour, it's like, okay, that's enough. I went through a good person test. I did it. I packed up and left, and from there it was like, I can do this now. Now it's like, it isn't a question of should I do this, can I do this. Once I've done it once, it's like, okay, no problem. But it's still strange by yourself, and it was really hard, but it's not impossible. And then once you start, you can't stop.
That's pretty cool. Just as a side note, have you ever heard Larry Sullivan's story about when he got back and did his first open air in Tuscaloosa?
No, I gotta hear that.
That's one of the funniest things. You'll have to tell it because he created, gone. He created a riot. Give Andy a chance to come back on. I'll have to get him on here and have him tell about it. Hang on a second. Andy, you there? All right. Give it a second, everybody. Hang on a second. Yeah, we're interviewing Andy Schmelzer here, a Super Bowl team leader, 4 or 5 times, and hearing his story here. Lost him for a second. Let's see if we can get him back on here. All right. There you go. All right, cool.
Oh, that was weird, but yeah, Larry will have to tell me about that later, huh?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. That's so funny. It's kind of one of those things. Like I remember Diane Lytle. Remember her?
Yep.
Yeah, she did kind of the same thing. She just, you just do some things early on, like you just don't do later on. But I'll save Larry's story. It's funny. Well, cool. So you're saying, obviously, you said it directly, like going to the camps, being around other people.
Yep.
It's really helpful for your training, understanding. Obviously, most of us don't live around a lot of guys that preach, and so that's kind of the one way that you get around other people is going to a training session or some larger event. Would you say that's true?
Yep, absolutely. So even when I had first done those boot camps, I've heard of Super Bowl outreach for many years, and I was never able to go to any because that was one of our winter mission to Ghana. We would go in February and like September, And it's like every year, it's like we're getting somebody trying to look up results of the Super Bowl game because we're always there during that weekend and
Yeah.
during the game. And it's like I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, there's outreach guys there too. And it's like, man, it's like if we could change our date, I'd go. And then we end up suspending overseas missions for a while, or we would go to we started going to Mongolia, which was a different time of year. So I was around for February's, and I was like, now I got to go. I got to go with these guys, and I signed up and went in 2010 in Miami. It was pretty neat. So it's a lot of similar stuff from Ambassador Academy, the old boot camps, Super Bowl outreaches, the long weekend, a really similar format. It really is a good thing to get involved in, good thing to experience. And when someone's new, it's one of the best places probably to go to get involved and learn, as well as even if you're experienced, a great place to go.
Amen. So like you come out of the camp, you go home. Was there another, or how many other steps of growing have you been through, or was that all you needed? And what you needed
um,
was the experience. Were there any other things that you might share and say, "Hey, was really helpful to me in my growth"?
I just needed more time and more time on the box, more time on the streets. And it's not something that I was going to stop doing. And it's like, okay, I'm in a rural area, I got to travel farther, I got to be more creative, um, on where to go and how to evangelize, and not worry about if I got the big huge crowds or if it's just going to be a small event. But just to do it and keep doing it. And from there, I think at the time there was a lot of message forums were a big thing then. Pretty
Right.
much before Facebook and things, there was a lot of people sharing videos. You get to know who they are, ask questions, you see people's questions, you see the experience, people answer them. And then you can find things on YouTube and videos, and it's like look up certain people, watch them preach, hear them preach, see what they say. And then even from there, it's like, okay, I say these things, and I can see now what this person's saying and how the scriptures they use when they preach, and the way they uh, use examples or teach the meaning of it. It's like that's different for me, so I can add this to what I'm doing. And that was good for a lot of growth too, from not being able to actually be around people regularly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So watching people online, for I guess nowadays with Facebook, there's so much on there.
Yeah.
Getting on there and interacting, that's a good way to grow. Anything else that you experienced to really help you grow? Did you ever think about quitting?
Yeah, actually, it's funny when a lot of people, you first learn this and it's like, okay, I'm going to start doing this good person test, meet somebody at the mall, give them a tract, ask them if they're a good person, and go through those steps like in the training course. And it would never go that way. And I'm like, what is going on? I watch these videos and watch how smooth they go. It's nothing like this. And after about 4, 5, 6, 10 times, it's like I can't get anybody to go through this conversation. And I'm like, this is scripted. This is Ray and Kirk in Hollywood, and Hollywood actor hiring people, getting their camera crew, going out, showing how the scenario works. And it's like, is this actually how it happens? And I was actually convinced that it really could be a scripted thing. And it's like, that's it. I'm just going to give it one more try. And then if it goes this way, I'm just not sure if this is really the way. So I'm at the mall. I got this clipboard, like people at clipboards asking me questions. Help me with the survey. And we're talking about Christmas. Do you believe in it? Yes and no. Do you think you're naughty or nice? Or you're a good person? And I had one of the most awesome conversations of going through the commandments. I've broken them. Wow, I'm deserving of hell. And the whole thing of this person realizing their fate. And it's like, it was almost, they didn't use the words, but it was almost like, what must I do to be saved? And I'm like, just jaw dropped and thinking, wow, this actually just happened. And that was pretty exciting for me. And so from that, it was like, yeah, this is it. This happens. And I don't know it wasn't really anything else that was saying, don't do this anymore. I just don't want to. This is boring. It's people just get mad at you. It was nothing like that. It was like, is this really real? And then I found it was through experience. So,
That's cool. That's cool.
but then you were
Well,
asking me
great.
something else. I forgot. I got onto a
Were there, like you
long
said, you were
sidetrack.
quitting? Was there other things that you had to do to help you grow? I mean, that was kind of an answer. And anything else that you like proactively did to help you persevere?
I think just being encouraged by seeing so many other people do that, whether it was through social media or being with people, going to the big events. Then I'd look at people like when I first started, and I'm just beginning doing this. I don't open air preach. I'm having a hard time getting through a one-on-one conversation and getting people to be talking to me for the whole length of it. And I show up, and there's people like that I hadn't met Joe Toy yet, but here is me starting, and Joe Toy is the kind of guy who's been doing this for years and years and years. And I show up at these events, and there's John Speed, who's already full blown training people, already has a lot of years of experience, and I'm watching these guys, and you got guys like Don Carnes and things like that. And it's like they've been doing this forever. Robert Parker, I meet him at this thing, and it's like he's been doing this forever. I'm looking at this as guys, these guys have 10, 15, sometimes 20 years experience at that time. And it's like they haven't stopped. They're still doing this, and they're doing it for a reason. And that was a lot of my encouragement to look at this and see how those guys are doing and realizing if I just keep doing this, and if they didn't quit, why should I? So I'm not going to quit, and I'll just keep going and be following the Lord's command.
That's cool. Frank, good afternoon. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good day. Thanks for tuning in. I think learning the realities of this work is, to me at least, is critical. That's what you're describing. Hey, get in the long haul. These are the kind of things that normally happen, and accepting that reality seems to be a very critical. Do you agree, Andy?
Yeah, you broke up a second.
Sorry.
It chattered a bit when you asked that.
So what I'm saying is, like, I think one challenge everybody seems to have is accepting the reality of open air preaching. Like a lot of people come in with we're all sort of we're simultaneously purist and pietist in a sense. And so we have this pure way, like you're talking about. Hey, I went through the good person test. They should have said yes, and when now they probably rarely do that. So what I'm saying though is accepting that reality to me is paramount to persevering, because if you overhear in this purist column too long, it's never going to match, and you're going to get frustrated and quit. So my point is, do you agree that embracing the reality of this work is paramount to you persevering in it?
Yeah, I think it is. And it definitely has to do with when you realize doctrine and you know that this is true and it is the gospel. It's like, how can you not align with the truth? How can you not continue on with promoting things that are, facts? Biblical truth is biblical truth, and it's impossible to be wrong. So how can you step away from it? How can you not continue to promote it? So.
Well, let's move on to the Super Bowl. We'll chat about that. Thanks for sharing all that background. So you've been coming to almost every Super Bowl since 2010, is that right?
Yeah, I've only missed a couple, but yeah, I've gone to almost every one of them since then.
Do you have a favorite story from them that you remember, or do they all run together?
Um, no, I do have a couple of favorites, but I think the one that is really the most fun is running into Doc for the first time. Uh, he's an amazing guy, and I remember there was a guy a while back from Minnesota. I grew up there. For people that don't know, and I think, what was his name, Chisholm or something like that. He was like
Yeah,
the Minnesota guy, and all
yeah.
of a sudden we're at Indianapolis Super Bowl, and here comes John Chisholm in with this group, and it's like, okay, these guys must be from Minnesota. I wonder if, where they're from. So I go talk to a couple guys, and I run into Doc, and it's like, hey, how you doing? I'm Andy. I'm Bill. And where are you from? In Minnesota. I grew up there. He goes, well, I grew up in Cottage Grove. I said, really? I said, I grew up in St. Paul Park, which my house was like the border of Cottage Grove was like a block and a half away. So it's like the same town. And I said, so you must have went to Park High School. He goes, yeah, I did. I said, so did I. And he's like, well, what year did you graduate? Oh, I graduated in 82. When did you graduate, Bill? He goes, I graduated in 82. And I'm like, no, you
No
didn't.
way.
How did we not know each other? And it's like, here's our last name, SCH, Schmelzer Shank. I don't think our lockers were more than 3 or 4 lockers away. And we never really got to know each other. And I think this was a graduating class of like maybe 300-400 people. So there's a lot of people. And it's like weird how we didn't really know each other, probably knew of each other, didn't really know each other. And then from there, it's like, it was just neat to, wow, this is great. So ever since, it's like we're, so much closer now from that. And that was just
funny.
kind of a fun experience of
Funny.
meeting him and realizing that, where we were both from. So that was kind of fun.
Did you know anybody in common?
Yeah, quite a few people.
Really?
Some of them we're both friends with. Some of them we just, knew who each other were and stuff. Yeah, I hung out with these guys. I didn't know them. I hung out with these guys. Like, yeah, I know who they are, but I didn't know them. So yeah, we had a little bit of that to talk about. So that was
That's
a lot
funny.
of fun.
That's funny. Well, cool. So what is it you think is unique or about the Super Bowl that you would encourage people to come? What do you like about it or don't like about it?
I think the best thing is being around so many like-minded people of a desire to share the gospel, a desire to see people get saved, a desire to be obedient to the Great Commission. And knowing that when you're doing this, it's like when we're at home or even there, we share a lot of same experiences from hecklers, the families rejecting us, people maybe in your family not getting saved. Um, there's also other people that we introduce to this and they get involved in it. And there's also the whole issue with, the laborers are always few, and anybody new getting into this always struggles with convincing the church and church leaders and pastors that this is a good thing. Let's get people involved. How come everybody in the church isn't doing this? There's all that frustration that new people have gone through that we all have. And there's so many things that we all experience. And from there, it's like anybody can share a story of an experience. It's like, yep, I get that. Or I share something, yep, somebody gets me. And that is a really powerful thing, knowing that we have so much in common of our experiences that when we're out away from these groups of street preachers, people have a harder time understanding what we're going through in growth and frustrations and losing family and friends and things like that. Some people don't get it, but the ones that do, it's such a strong bond and it makes the fellowship so fantastic.
That's good. Anything else? That's good. Anything else?
Um, I think for me, I look at a lot of the new guys that struggle, and there's a guy that's like maybe never open air preached, and he does for his first time at Super Bowl. And then afterwards, he's listening to a guy like Mark Yoho, Joe Toy, Matthew and Mason, and guys like that have been doing this for so long, and they are looking at that, going, "Man, those guys are so good." I mean, how does it? How do you get there and things like that? And I got to encourage people that it doesn't matter where you're starting and how many more years experience you have. Because I remember my first Super Bowl and my first evangelism boot camp. And I'm around guys like John Speed, like I said, who's been doing this forever. Guys like Robert Parker and things like that. And Don Carnes. And it's like, these guys were like already, when I first started doing it 10, 15 years maybe. And I'm looking at that going, man, how do I get like that? And you can't think of it like that because people, if they're going to look at me and say, wow, I like how you open air preach. It's like, I had a first time. I had a first day going out doing evangelism. I've had day one. John Speed has had day one. Mark Yoho has had a time where he had never gotten on a box on the street. He may have experienced pulpit preaching, but the first time on the street, not one of us didn't have a day one. And it takes, how many years to continue doing this, to learn, to grow. And then some of these new guys, I'll tell them too, in 10, 12 years, you're still going to be doing this. And that guy coming out in day one is going to be going, wow, how do I get like you? So I just think no matter what you think, no matter how good somebody else is or how inexperienced you might be, these guys that you're looking to have had a day one. They've had a first time ever. They've had a time where they've stumbled and struggled and maybe didn't even preach a very good gospel at all. And it just comes with time, and experience comes with just getting out there.
That's good. That's good. So in terms of Super Bowls themselves, have you had a favorite city?
Favorite city, I would probably have to say Indianapolis was probably my favorite to go to, because at the time the NFL experience was just out in the open. No fences, no barriers. It was all right there, and we went through, and the access to fans and things going on was pretty special. So that was neat. And I think the year after that, everything started to change to be inside convention centers and things now. But that was really a good time. The people were great. For a cold city, it was unseasonably warm, so it wasn't too bad. I think the other favorite city was probably Minneapolis, which you're going to be shocked because you know how I don't like cold. I hate it. But it was something special about that Super Bowl that it was just the people that were there made it really great.
Yeah, that was definitely distinct. Yeah, Indianapolis.
Yeah, Atlanta was good too. What's that?
Indianapolis. That I guess that's Saturday. I mean, it seems like all weekend because they had that outdoor fan fest, but there were so many people down there. It was staggering, like overrun, and so it was a good time.
I think what was special about that is we were in that certain area on these blocked off streets, and there was stoplight after stoplight after stoplight, and each team was parked at a stoplight. And when I had my turn to open air preach, I'm getting up on the stool, and you're head and shoulders above the crowds. And I look down at the stoplight, and it's like, I recognize that person. He's one of our groups. And the next stoplight, I couldn't tell who it was, but I could see a head of a person. And I'm like looking at this going, oh my, this gospel is everywhere. And then you'd see somebody from across the street, when as soon as the walk light comes, they're running across the street towards us. Halfway across the street, they stop and go, oh, they're here too. They're everywhere. You can't get away from these guys. And I'm just hearing that, just laughing, going, whoever planned this event did a good job. So
I'm gonna laugh. Praise God. That was funny. That became the kind of thing we listen for. We hear that frequently.
Yeah,
those Jesus people are everywhere, that kind of thing. And so, that's true.
Good feedback.
Minneapolis was it worked out surprisingly well because it was cold, but it worked out well. And in Atlanta, Atlanta seemed to be much of a pinnacle down there, especially on Saturday and Sunday. Just the whole layout, was worked out good. It was good.
The thing about Atlanta was all the times I've been involved in Super Bowls been great. And then once you started having me be a leader, I see more of some of the behind the scenes stuff and the problems that can occur. And when they do occur, you got to deal with them. And there's so many times I've been to these Super Bowls that people don't realize some of the problems that do arise and you got to take care of. It's difficult sometimes. And sometimes it's like, it just really takes away from the enjoyment of it, because other times I'm not a leader. It's like, this is a great time. And, being a leader, there's some struggles. It's not like it's hard, but there's some things that we have to deal with that you normally don't. And then Atlanta was probably the first time I was a leader that it's like nothing went wrong. There was no problems. There was no fires to put out. And I'm like, is something wrong with this picture? What's going on? And it's like, I think I even texted you and said, is this normal for you? Because for some reason, this seems way too easy. What's about to drop? And you're like, what do you mean it's too easy? I said, we're not running into the problems we usually run into. And for some reason, that Atlanta trip was, I think, probably one of the best Super Bowls for not having anything go wrong, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's true. It all seemed, except for one or two things, it definitely worked out well. We were so close. I think it was the first time. Well, we were relatively close to Minneapolis. We're really close to the whole scene. That really,
Mhm.
anyway, that kept it simple. Staying out of the car, staying out of the bus. That kept it simple. Yeah, we've learned some
Yeah.
lessons along the way. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Learned
Yeah.
some lessons, man.
Learn what
So
not to do sometimes, huh?
that's exactly right. So let's move on to this year, Las Vegas. We were out there a couple of weeks ago. What's your forecast for Vegas?
Vegas will be the forecast. It'll be cooler, for sure. It's going to be a great place, great venue. It's surprised me of the lack of police interaction, because I'm not sure about this. I'm just guessing that a lot of these casinos deal with their own security and probably don't even need police for what they deal with. And from all the years of them dealing with street preachers and people I've heard have gone out there and have problems with casino security people, they've realized this is lawful. This is First Amendment. And as long as we don't get on their property and turn up an amp way into their building, they're not going to care about us. And that showed during the retreat. There was no issues at all with anything with that. Everything ran smooth. The people are there from everywhere. Um, so many different accents and languages that you hear. You don't even know what country some of these people are from, but I'm sure they know English as well. So it was a great venue, great place for people to be able to come.
Yeah, frankly, I mean, I don't know where you would get on their property. Those buildings are so far away,
Yeah.
and other than the Phoenician, I mean, obviously you could walk up to the door, but if you stay on the sidewalk, we're pretty good ways away from. In
Yeah.
other words, it's
Yeah.
not something you were. It's not like they're right there. You're having to manage it. It's all works out pretty easily. It's not complicated. There.
Nope.
So yeah, I'm amazed. Just the foot traffic, staggeringly busy all day long. I'd been there twice before, and then we went there two different times a day. I think in the afternoon and in the evening it was busy, and it was busy, busy, busy. And so it should be really good. So
Yeah. You're gonna take the typical tourist like you're normally gonna see, and adding to the football fans to that, and the foot traffic we saw at the draft and at this retreat is just gonna. I think it's gonna exceed that a little bit.
it'll be interesting to see what the NFL does. Since you were there, we were both there. I imagine they'll block off Las Vegas Boulevard. I would imagine, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. If they don't, it won't matter. But if they do, it'll be incredible. If they block that off for 3 days or 2 days,
Yeah.
that would be crazy. Well, cool. Any other thoughts about this year to share, or after being there a couple times, any other thoughts about it?
I think if there's anyone who hasn't experienced a Super Bowl or any kind of ministry, I think that Super Bowl in Vegas would be a great first venue for a lot of people. I think it'd be a great venue for people that aren't used to large crowds. That it would be, a lot tamer than you would think. You'd think it'd be more rowdy, more ruckus, more crazy. Not that it's not, but it's not beyond what you would think. So I think it'd be a great first time for a lot of people that will see some interaction. They won't probably see the kind of, you know, I guess, outbursts or violence even. Everybody's just there for a good time.
Hey, man, Frank, good to have you. Thanks for tuning in. It was a lot calmer than you might imagine. And plus, with the consistency of the foot traffic, it's not like you're waiting for it like in other cities or trying to track it down. It's all within about a 2 mile and a half stretch of street, Las Vegas Boulevard. So it's really, we're willing to be really simple. Hey, by the way, I called that lady yesterday. Did I tell you that?
Yeah, you said you got a hold of her and she was super nice.
Yeah,
That's
she was
great.
nice. And so I
Good
sent her an
start.
email yesterday, and Lord willing, that'll work itself out. Thanks. she said she talked to you. Is that right? You talked to her?
Yeah. I made a few phone calls to some of these community centers, and some is telling them what we need and what our needs are, and that we've stayed at Croc centers through the Salvation Army. And I said, if you have a similar venue, if that's something we could rent with you guys. And some of them were like, nope, we don't do anything like that. Okay, thanks for your time.
Oh,
And another person said, try these two places. Called one, they said, no, we don't do that. And then this lady was last and said, yeah, that's something we might even consider. Let me run it up the flagpole. So it's like,
okay.
that'd be all right.
Good job.
So
Thank you.
like 2
That's
miles
great.
off the strip.
Yeah, that'd be good if we can get in there. And I think she was really friendly. She was definitely really friendly, and so they'll willing to work itself out. Well, cool, man. Well, Andy, what a treat. Anything else to share? Want to share before we sign off here?
No, I'm pretty much all out of love, you know.
Well, it certainly is
So,
a good time. You know, the last 3 years have been together at Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and here. It's hard to believe those 3 years are coming gone that fast. It'll be New Orleans next year, Lord willing. But
yeah, that West
seems
Coast
like
run
we've
zipped
certainly
by.
been able to, have a lot of folks, a lot of new folks come out and join us, sort of the mission accomplished on that end. And even Pat was telling me this morning, Dennis Conwell lives nearby, and he's trying to bring some people from his church. He lives about 3 hours away. So that kind of mission is working, looking, trying to do more out west. And and then after next year, we'll be back in San Francisco. We'll see how that works itself out. But
All right.
don't you think it's been different? It hasn't been necessarily different as a operation, but different being out west. Do you think that's been different than eastern cities?
No, I don't think there's a whole lot different. The only difference I can see is it's harder for some people to travel that far if they're really that far over in the East Coast. Got a lot of less people, but once it gets back to New Orleans and things, all those guys will come back. But no, as far as everything else, the cities, the way you organize things, the way you have us, implement things, it's not much different of things we do.
All right, man. Well, listen, Andy, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope everybody was encouraged, inspired. Really, the main thing here is get some good, honest instruction, guidance, wisdom for this particular work. I mean, we could talk forever about all the stories, just interacting with people going by in the conversation.
Yeah.
Almost a given work, and that's why you go, so they can hear the gospel. But we got to get out there and stay out there. That's the mission. All right, Eddie.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Have a good day. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
See ya.
Yeah, man, what a treat. We'll show you the team leaders up here. On this picture, there's Andy on the left, Mark Yoho, Joshua Tubbs from Birmingham, Matthew Rodano from Phoenix, Pat Haggerty from Fort Collins, Jim Shaw, the next one. He's new. He lives down in Brunswick, Georgia, a friend of Al Baker's. And then Mason Goodnight. He's not new to Super Bowl, but Mason is a new team leader. And so he's there. He and Ryan Clark, who's been a team leader a couple of years, go to the same church. In the last 12 months, Mason's become a full-time evangelist on the staff at Wellspring Bible Fellowship in Rhodesburg, Oregon. So it's exciting. God's working here. I got a message the other day speaking about that, because that's been the topic of our teaching for the last 2 and now 3 years. For this year, will be the third year. Evangelists really integrated into the leadership of the church, and so that's been our topic. We've talked about that in various ways. And pastor from Texas said a friend of his, an OPC friend, was looking for a staff evangelist. So I think this is catching on a little bit. God works slow, but it's catching on. What we're saying, what we're pushing, what we're trying to do, more preaching. So praise God. All of these 3 years and messages are working together. So it's been an exciting time, and Andy's been right there in the middle of it. So, all right, everybody, listen, you got any questions, call me or text me, 423-724-7500, just like the thing going across the bottom shows. And we hope to see you soon. Give me a ring. Bye-bye.